Oh my goodness, am I really here with the Dr. Eric Roman? Hi, Eric. How are you?
Hey, Victoria. It is so great to be here with you. And my, oh my, we got some exciting stuff to talk about, don't we?
Yeah, we do. Hey, guys, we thought we would take a minute just to bring you behind the scenes. We are vigorously planning for the 20th anniversary productivity workshop in September in Frisco, and Eric is going to take the stage as part of our clinical calibration course for young doctors. Eric, tell us about the course that you're doing here at our program.
Victoria, what we're talking about is how young doctors, and honestly, doctors at any stage of their development, can calibrate their life to their professional career. Calibrating your life and your career, because one of the challenges I've had the joy over my journey. By the way, Victoria, I don't know that a lot of people know, I actually attended the PDA workshop before I started practicing dentistry. Like, I was still in residency at the time. And so my entire life has been productive, right?
I remember you couldn't even grow a beard back then.
Couldn't even grow it. No, I might've had like 2 little blonde facial hairs. How times have changed, right? And so, it had such a massive impact on me throughout my career in PDA. So what a really cool fitting way to hopefully channel some of that incredible career opportunity to the audience and the attendees. One of the things that I found in coaching and hiring well more than triple digits of associates and teaching clinical directors, we've got a really hard space inside of our profession right now with the plight of the employed dentist, the dental associate. And we have extraordinarily high turnover. We have ridiculously poor data. And what that really means is that our young doctors aren't getting what they wanted out of their career. And the second thing that I discovered is that financial success does not translate into people getting what they want out of their lives. And if we can't connect our financial success and our performance in doing good while we're doing good in our practices to getting what we want out of our incredible lives, my Victoria, like, why are we doing this in the first place? So I'm going to give all the attendees some really tactical strategies to be able to take back and put into their lives ASAP so that they're going to get what they want out of their dental career.
Oh man, I love that so much. Well, thank you so much for being a part of it. In September, this whole program, the first of its kind in the nation, because it's coming from PDA and we've never done this before, but it is a program specific to associate doctors. So if you're an owner and you're contemplating hiring an associate, or you've just hired an associate, your associate is stuck in their productivity at 200, 300, 400 an hour, something like 3,000 a day. We can boost that. We can accelerate that and quickly get your associates up to speed where they're producing like an owner. But more importantly, they've got life balance and they're grounded in their happiness in their career. Dr. David Port talks about that a lot, his research study and his doctorate degree, the value creation for doctors. And it really is about values alignment between the work I love and the life I'm building. And so, Eric, there is no one better in our industry, whether you're young or young at heart, that couldn't benefit from your one life system and making sure that your life path is aligned with your career path. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Victoria. I'm excited to see you and the team in September and can't wait to see who else is going to be joining us there. It's going to be an event that you don't want to miss. So here's your chance. Sign your butt up and get out there. We'll see you in Texas.
Doctor, are you living the dream or just dreaming of living? It is my honor to announce the PDA 20th Anniversary Special Conference this September 12th to the 14th in Frisco, Texas, the nation's leading course on dental practice growth. If you feel isolated as a leader who is frustrated that your schedule is unproductive, maybe your team is disjointed, or your systems are inefficient, this is the conference for you. The PDA 20th Anniversary Conference has all new features, including keynote speaker Emmitt Smith, who is a Pro Football Hall of Fame running back and entrepreneur. You can choose your own educational track to customize your learning experience. Go to www.productivedentist.com and click the pop-up, or select Productive Dentist Academy Conference under the Dental CE and Events tab. That's www.productivedentist.com. Seating is limited. Register today, and we look forward to helping you make your dreams become reality. I'll tell you the biggest clincher of all, which I think will be my area of study for many years, is I have figured out in the last 18 months how to separate data points from emotional points, and I give them equal weight. Welcome to the Everyday Practices Podcast. I'm Regan Robertson, and my co-host, Dr. Chad Johnson, and I are on a mission to share the stories of everyday dentists who generate extraordinary results using practical, proven methods you can take right into your own dental practice. If you're ready to elevate patient care and produce results that are anything but ordinary, buckle up and listen in. Welcome to Everyday Practices Dental Podcast. I think maybe we should do a podcast today. What do you think, Chad?
Well, it's a Monday, I think, and I think that would be a great day to do a podcast. Here we are with one of our special friends and co-host for the day, Maggie Augustyn. Doctor, how you doing today?
I'm good. How are you guys? It's a Monday, and it is brightening up my Monday to see the two of you hanging out with me. That is the cherry on the top.
Wahoo! Do you have your oxygen ready, Maggie, so that way I can talk?
I went boxing this morning, so I feel like I can definitely, I can definitely handle you today.
Sorry, everybody. Part-time, part inside joke. So
I didn't even get that joke fully, other than I thought our fridge died over the weekend, and then the cooler also leaked all over the floor this morning. So I've been up early. I didn't box, Maggie, but I
You've been boxing with life.
Yeah, it was really interesting. So
that's awesome.
Listeners, Dr. Maggie sent Chad and I an Instagram reel, and it was just a really short, 20, 30-second reel. And it was 3 words that executives should not be using. And it's detrimental to how they perform as leaders. And Maggie, why don't you give us a little insight of those 3 words and why you wanted to podcast about this today?
Well, part of it is because I feel like I'm very much affected by having used those words in the past, and it's very freeing to see. Although when you start doing this, it's quite uncomfortable to stop using them. And the 3 words are, if you haven't guessed, just, maybe, think. And the way that you would use them in a sentence would be, well, I just want you to do this. I'm just following up, or I maybe want to present an idea to you, or I think that, instead of coming out straight and dropping those words and really being more settled and more comfortable and confident with the information that you're presenting. And then in turn, that information gets absorbed and received, I think, with a sense of more authority coming from the person that's speaking. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I know early in my leadership career, I felt that it was my job to know everything, to know it all. And so that puts you in an uncomfortable position if you don't know where to put your focus as a leader. And so I think those words have a tendency to come out because you can't really, it's hard to shield that lack of confidence. And I actually say from the front of when we do our PDA conferences, for many years, I would kick off the actual workshop saying, you are not just a dentist or just an assistant. And I would talk about the diminishing power of using the word just and why it should be stricken from your mind when you think about how you show up.
Unless you flip it in the negative like you did. If you say you are not just, then it allows for, or, there might be, it is an English word that has its purpose. And it's so what I'm saying is,
I know, I like that, Chad, advocating for the English language. That's good.
Yes, I like the English language. No, but what I'm saying is if you're intentional and purposeful about when you use the word just, then go ahead and do so. But I think Maggie, that video that you shared with us is demonstrative of how quickly we use those diminutive words, to downplay the scope of what we're talking about. And like you had said right before we started hitting record, that it can be something that that women might struggle with more, because they're like, is this the right place for me in the workforce to be able to say so, and whatnot. And everyone would struggle with those words, but diminutive words altogether, I think that we should just do that. Maybe
Right.
those are three good words for people to reflect on and realize how often they use that.
Yeah, I mean, so I went to see a physician today, and they saw me in the scrubs, and they said, "So are you a physician?" And it took everything from me not to answer, "No, I'm just a dentist."
Sure.
Right? It comes up all the time. Now imagine telling your kid, "Go clean your room," or "I think that maybe just you should maybe consider cleaning your room." Right? How are those two received? Um, One is with an air of authority and respect, and the other is, something that is, I don't know, maybe more of a suggestion than anything else. And just like we talked about before we hit record, one of the things I think that new associates struggle with very much, because we're not taught otherwise in dental school, is I think you might have a cavity, or I think, or rather,
Sure.
you have a little cavity here. You have a little bit of gingivitis here. I mean, how often have you heard those kinds of things coming out of the operatory? And what does that signal to the patient when you say, you kind of have a little bit of gingivitis here? Maybe we should do a deep clean. That does not drive the message adequately, correctly. Um, Respectfully, or in any kind of authoritative way when you talk
Mhm.
to the patient that way.
Mhm.
So, Maggie, how did you temper yourself? So, you obviously had a little bit of a neurological pattern stop for you. So, it took effort. So, you had to acknowledge that and become self aware that you were about to drop the I'm just a dentist, but you stopped yourself. What sort of things have you done throughout your career to start to temper that? Because we know when we're making new neurological pathways and new ways of thinking, that takes time, practice, effort. So, what are some of the things that you did to eliminate those words from your decision-making conversations?
One of the ways that you can reduce the amount of time that it takes you to learn something is to determine that it has an extremely important impact on you. So when something happens and it's important to you, you're going to be able to implement and incorporate that into your life a lot easier than if perhaps maybe you can benefit from it, right? So when I was a younger, I wasn't I was already a practice owner, but I had a mentor take me aside and say, "You never say little cavity. You would never say a little bit of gingivitis, because that reduces your authority, and no one is going to follow through with your recommendation if you see that him hawing." And I see that in the associate that we have at our office, that there's a certain difficulty in, "I think you have this, or maybe, or little." And so for me, understanding the impact of what I was saying and how I was saying it, how it was going to land to the patient, and in turn, if I him hawed or was unsure, I was maybe I was doing it because I wanted to be liked. Nobody wants to hear you've got a big beep cavity in your tooth, right? But
Right.
so when you say, "Well, you kind of have a small cavity here," you're gonna. It feels like people are going to like you more when you reduce the size of that cavity. But what it did is it was a tremendous disservice to the patient, because I was not adequately describing what was happening. And I wanted them to like me, and I wanted them to have a pleasant experience. But in the end, I was not doing the right thing. So understanding the gravity of that for me is what foreshortened that time, or that element of incorporating that into how I was speaking to patients and how quickly that happened to me. Although this just dentist thing, I have a thing with physicians. Well, I think many of us do, where we think we're not as good as physicians, and I'm still fighting against that. So that's why it is incorporated into my mind, but I still have to fight against it more than I'd like to admit.
You know, what's interesting about what you just said, Maggie, in particular, was I know Bruce Baird has talked often about not prejudging patients, and that there's a lot of assumptions that come into play when you're presenting treatment to patients. And I can see how very easily and even unintentionally you could slip into that pattern of diminishing the amount of the cavity or wanting that to be liked and building relationships with them. And even outside of dentistry, not wanting to hurt people's feelings, but you're actually disempowering that patient or person that you're having. I've done that where I have assumed something of someone, altered my response in a diminished way, and it ended up biting me in the butt. It did the opposite of what I had wanted. And so by not honoring that process and using those smaller, less confident words, it can actually end up really going vastly the opposite direction, even though we might want to be protecting that relationship or outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happens when you get to the other side of this, and this just happened in the operatory for me, I had a patient who came in and she did not want to hear that she needed to have her bridge replaced. And so I said, you have an abscess over the tooth, and now you have significant amount of significant amount of bacteria under this bridge that's just brewing, and that infection is never going to go away. I am no longer afraid of telling her the truth. So what then patients might do is they'll come back to you. So what you're saying is that there might be an infection there. And my response every time is, no, that is absolutely not what I'm saying. I'm saying that you do have an infection that we can't get out in any other way other than this. And it's funny trying to have that happens to me multiple times in a week, where a patient will look back at me to try to get me to minimize my initial finding, not so that I'm likable, but so that, I don't know, maybe they don't lose as much self-worth in the process. I don't know.
Do you know what else I think it is specific to that example within dentistry and infection? Is when people think of infection, they think of their face half swollen with pus oozing out. When people say, oh, so I have an infection, that is their definition of infection. When we think of infection, we think bacteria, fungus, or some microorganism is present causing dis-ease, right? It's causing a disease. And that threshold is a lot lower. So when people say, well, so it's got bacteria in there, but it's not infected, right? And it's like, where's the disconnect? But that's just the lay understanding of it. And we then come in and say, no, it's an overt infection. Of course it's infected. And they're like, well, if it's infected, then why doesn't it hurt to push on it? Because it's in the bone. Well, if it's infected, then why isn't it maybe even showing up on the x-ray? Let's just say in some
Sure.
examples.
Right.
Well, it just hasn't eaten away at the bone enough. Are you wanting the infection that is currently present to continue to grow bad enough that it shows up on the x-ray and is eating away at the bone? And then you get to call it an infection? Or do we get to call it like it is now and say, yes, these are early signs of infection, which indeed it is, and therefore we should treat it, as opposed to, like, well, according to the lay definition of infection, I can't pop a bunch of pus out of it, so it must not be an infection. Well, Regan, this is how people talk about it.
No, I think it's a really good point. And I often refer to dentists as 1/3 artist, 1/3 engineer / scientist, and 1/3 detective. And for me, how I got myself in my executive decision-making abilities and communication, how I removed those 3 particular phrases from my repertoire when I showed up to meetings is heavily leaning on to the detective side of it. So it was actually in the questions that I asked my team that surrounded me, and taking their particular answers and formulating a solution together. So as you both know, I'm a huge Star Trek nerd. I love it. I grew up on it. TNG, for all of those that know,
Oh,
And
TNG, of course.
of course. And I watched the interactions on the bridge of these spaceships, and the captain never solely made a decision on their own. They gathered the experts around them and they asked really great investigative questions. And when you gather all of that information together, your confidence starts to rise, and it no longer becomes a maybe. It becomes something that you move forward together as a plan. You are the final decision maker in that. And when I think of the patient, a lot of it comes down to education. And you did nail it, Chad, from my perspective, humbly. I didn't know until I heard from Dr. Tom Larkin, Dr. Bradley Bale, and Michelle Hudson that if your gums are bleeding, that's just like having an open wound on the outside of your body. So picture cutting yourself and now you're bleeding. What are you going to do with that? Are you going to put cake on it? Are you going to like rub some food into it? It's getting it directly into your bloodstream. It took that level of education for me to understand, because my pockets were okay. You know, I had just kind of lackadaisical, complacent cleaning sessions to elevate the status of risk for me, to tell me that this is a serious situation, Chad, because I wasn't hussy and I wasn't watching those Instagram reels of the hoof cleaners, you know, the huge abscesses on the cows and all that.
Right.
You know, so yeah, so my face wasn't swollen, but that doesn't mean that it shouldn't be elevated in threat status. So education is a big part of that. And you must appear confident, or you're not going to get that level of buy-in. And the best way for me in my particular role is asking investigative questions. What is our goal? What is the long-term vision? First and foremost, state it at every single meeting. So with the patient, let's remind us, even if we're in for a cleaning, let's remind us, Maggie's, like one of your big goals with your practice that I'm so passionate about is you're like, I want all of my patients to get to end of life with their teeth. And it sounds so simple, right? It just sounds like what a silly thing to say until you realize how serious that is. So you could put every patient in that chair and remind them, you know what? We are here to get you to end of life with all of your teeth. So let's talk about the plan for that. So I do that with my team with PDA. Let's talk about the long-term vision and then talk about what obstacles are sitting in between that. And this is where it comes into, I'm watching these particular things. This is a level green right here. But I am watching it there. We can let it go. And you can choose to do that, or you can fix it now. I think that's where you can be a little bit more empowering to the patient and let them know from those maybes. Because I don't know how both of you treat in the chair. My own dentist, he'll have things where they watch it, or he'll say, we'll watch it until, or you could take care of it now. So that's how he helps me.
Chad, in your education, if you can think that far back, do you remember learning or being affected by saying little bit to a patient, or did you was that never an issue for you?
No, it was an issue, and I don't think I addressed it until year 9 of practice, after having gone to Productive Dentist Academy.
Oh, yeah. Bruce talks about this incessantly, right? And Regan, for you, this just made me think that we started talking about how far into your career how long did it take before you realized that was a thing?
I didn't make the connection. So I have, since I have the background in journalism and interviewing and all of that, I think I never made the connection up until 2019. I became C-suite in the like mid 2016. And I did get buy-in. So I did do that. However, that didn't increase my confidence, and it was reflected to me. And I used to hear, why can't you act more presidential? That was one comment that was made. And I thought, well, what does that mean? And I realized I was being so open that I was showing where I was ignorant. I was showing where I was uncertain. And instead of that, I think it was just a series of initiatives within the company and a series of people that I managed that I started to figure out a cadence and a rhythm to get the appropriate responses. So small proof points started happening for me that showed me, and I would do autopsies for lack of a better, I guess assessments might be better. But if we had a very successful initiative, I would go backwards and say, what did I do to contribute to this? What did my team do? And I would almost look at it like Pete Carroll. I really like Pete Carroll. He coached the Seahawks for many years. And he used to say, you know, at the end of a game, they would go back and work on what worked and what didn't work. And they, instead of leaning into failure, they just saw failure as that opportunity to learn. So I put that into place and started looking at that. And then I started eventually, probably 2022. Yeah, we're only in 2024 now. I started making it so much less about me, Maggie. I started to let the ego go and instead placed the focus on the long-term vision and goal. So in your case, that would be, you know, the patient's health. So instead of me wanting them to like me, wanting my team to like me, wanting them to feel okay, me projecting that this might make them feel a certain way, that doesn't exist anymore. And I'll tell you the biggest clincher of all, which I think will be my area of study for many years, is I have figured out in the last 18 months how to separate data points from emotional points, and I give them equal weight. And I think that is a very big secret to removing the words maybe, just, and I think because I lean heavily on my team to tell me the data facts of a particular situation that we're in, I attribute for the emotional elements, and I know where I show up in that. I am a great feeler. So I won't say I think, but one of my weaknesses, Chad will know this, I say I feel. Because I do, I feel, my heart activates before my head activates. I'm the Captain Kirk. So I act in my intuition. And the answer is it's balanced. So I'm very self-aware around my strengths and my team's strengths. And when I ask all these questions, I ask myself at the end of those questions, is our emotional needs met? Is the data points met? Do both areas feel well served? And if the answer is yes, then I know where we're going. And it no longer is an I think or maybe or just at all. No, this is my recommendation. This is the direction we are going.
All right. So here's a tangent off the same road, though. Okay. It's on the same map.
Are you sure?
Yes. It's going to be labeled an avenue instead of a street. There are times when a patient will say, do I need to do this?
Oh, yeah.
So along that line, I'll say, well, here's the deal. Need is a manipulative word. And if I answer the way that you want me to answer, then you will be happy with how I respond. If I don't respond the way that you want me to, whether it's yes or no, then you're going to think, that guy doesn't know what he's talking about, because you have a bias already as to what you want the word need to mean. And I apologize to the patient. I say, I have to kind of explain this in a roundabout way, but then you'll better understand what I'm getting at. When we rephrase the question, which is a manipulative question, does my daughter need braces? If you think yes, and I say yes, you go, oh, good. He said the answer that I wanted. Now there's the other side of the coin, need and want, right? So now all of a sudden he said the answer that I wanted. Then it's like, oh, this is good. But when we rephrase the question to, will my daughter's oral health be benefited by doing this procedure? Now we're on the same page of saying, okay, what's the ups and the downs? You're going to be out $6,000. There's the down. You're going to have to clean your teeth more. That's a down. You're going to have braces in your picture. That's no good. There's a downside to it, right? And then there's an upside. Then you'll have straighter teeth, which for patients, most of the time it's about aesthetics. And then for dentists, it's about form following function and it being functionally appropriate with the added benefit of it being aesthetic at the same time. So a long roundabout way of saying, when you ask, does my daughter need braces? No, she doesn't need braces, because she's not going to die if she doesn't get braces. So need is a hard word to work around when you're talking about, do you need to have this, like diabetic treatment done? No, just suffer and, have a horrible life. It's just like, that makes no sense. We don't word it that way. When we're asking health questions, it would better be phrased as, would my health benefit by having this treatment? How so? And what are the risk rewards? Then you as the patient, now that you've been fully consented, then you can say, yes, I agree to this treatment because I understand the trade-off of the downfall, but I want the upside to a healthier mouth by doing this. So that was my avenue to the street of words. And it's a tough one, but needs and wants. If you want something, like if you want veneers, I don't have to do much at all, right? It's just like, you want a sign right there and let's get going and get some whiteys on the front. Heck yeah. Okay, let's roll.
Whiteys on the front.
You read, well, that's, if people come in and they go, I want white teeth. It's like, well, let's roll, because they want it, right? I mean, what convincing am I going to have to do? Do they sit down and go, do I need veneers? No one says that. That's dumb. They want it and they want it done. Like, can you do it tomorrow? Right. Yeah. So want is so easy to, let's just say it, so easy to sell. You want bleach trays? Well, let's take like Dr. Bruce, mix the alginate, right? Like, let's get started right now. But for, needs, it's like this way of like, who wants to do needs? I need to eat vegetables. Bleh.
There are two. I love that you said this because I have a lot of opinions around need versus want.
Good.
The first instance that I had was I was working in a company with one of my very best friends, Sandy. And I emailed her and I said, I think it was a logo, a piece of art, something to do a project. But I said, I need you to do this by this time. She wrote back to me and she said, you will not tell me that I need to do anything, which completely caught me off guard. I was like, but I just need this. What else am I supposed to say? So that alerted me. That was my first time alerting that the word need was maybe not a word that humans liked. In a business setting or a health professional setting. The second time it came back around and I was able to solve for it really effectively was with guidance from Paul Vigario, who's the CEO of Surf CT. And he just went off on a tangent one day when we were speaking, and he said, none of our clients ever need anything. It's about a desire and about a want.
Right.
And that one small interaction with him, I strike the word need from every document that I can get my hands on. I focus it on want. And when people, I love that you said that, does my daughter need braces? When people come at me with a need, what I always say is, what is your desired outcome? And we will work around the desired outcome. Or Morgan Milagrosa, who is at Gingivitis that I often shout out. When I was trying to get a health plan together, she caught me with a really good one. She said, what does like optimal health? I don't think she said optimal, but what does health look like to you? Can you define it for me?
Yeah.
That made all the difference. Maggie got excited. What?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that very astute of you, Chad, I've never thought of the term need as being manipulative. And I love that. I think there's a lot of truth in it, mostly truth. When you said that, and I tried to conceptualize it in my own office, I would have said, well, it's not about what I'm presenting you. It's really about your own philosophy of how you look at things, right? So if you don't care about not having teeth when you die, then then that's our answer there.
Then brush with sugar. I mean, go for it. Yeah.
But the thing that I have recently began to understand in the relationship of need with want is that it truly is all, if you start to think of things as wanting them, there's a tremendous amount of freedom. And I'll give you an example. I think I was telling my husband, I'm going out, I'm going to go to, I need to go to Nordstrom Rack. And he's like, do you really need to go to Nordstrom Rack? Like, I said, you know what? No, I want to go to Nordstrom Rack. And when I said I want to go to Nordstrom Rack, I no longer had to explain to him why I needed to go. Like that became unimportant. It wasn't about him testing me. Why do you need to go there? I know I don't need to. I want to.
No.
Right.
Yeah.
So now all of a sudden there's a lot of ownership over saying I want, and you no longer have to come up with explanations or excuses for some of the decisions that you're making, because it's not about need, it's about want, and it's okay to want.
It is okay to want. Yes. And for some people, it can be a long journey to get to that point. to say that I feel comfortable expressing what it is that I want, and I'm not selfish in expressing that.
But we can talk abstractly, because when we say the human will overcome just about anything. I mean, so if it's just like, if the person wants to breathe, they'll breathe. If the person wants to swim to the top, if they're stuck under the water and they're able to, they will make it happen. If we, for all due purposes, we will try and get it done. Human triumph is very impressive because it's all about the human will. Now we switch the narrative from need to will. Problem solved. It's going to get done.
I get chills about this kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Chad, you just introduced empathy into that. And remember, as Bruce is going through the treatment planning process, no, you really did, because treatment can go as slow or as fast as you desire. We can phase this out for you. And that's where empathy meets what we're talking about today, because some people can make change very quickly. Some people feel comfortable expressing what they want and activating on that. Other people need time to process. It's your extrovert, introvert, and coming up alongside them and saying, now you've been in a comfortable environment where you can express what your want and your desire is. Now we get to go at a speed that is comfortable and a pace that's comfortable for you. That's a very important piece, because that brings in the heart to it. So there's the data elements, what in your mouth needs to be looked at.
That's right. Sometimes people say, oh, do I have to have that topical? No, but you should want it, is what I tell them. I'm like, I don't even have to numb you. Like, if you take that as a win, as long as you don't move, then if you can pretend to me and play to me that you're numb so I can work confidently, then I'll do it without numbing. But most people can't. And I don't see why you would. The fact is, I want to use this numbing jelly on you because it's going to make it hurt less. And then I want to numb you because you're going to feel less. But it's a pick your poison. If you really don't like that, it's kind of whatever you get to be in charge. And that takes off, when people feel like they're at the mercy of this torturer that we call the dentist, then it's like, this is horrible, right? I don't want to have the dentist drill on me. It's like, well, then you probably won't. But it's like, but if you don't want a toothache, then pick your poison. If you don't want to feel it while I'm in mid procedure, then let's use some anesthetic to get you numb. So this whole like, do I have to have that topical stuff? It's like, no, it doesn't. You're asking me to save material money, like, okay. I'm going to charge you the same amount. I'm doing this to be nice to you. Have you ever thought that maybe it's, like you should want it, and if they go, well, it makes my throat numb, for the next 30 minutes or whatever. And it's just like, and I mean, right. You don't want it, then we don't use it. You're in charge. And when they're in charge, there's less fear. Less fear is a good thing. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. Am I mean for saying stuff like that out loud to the patient, like talking that through, or do other people, do you think, do that?
What makes you mean? What do you feel is
because
mean about
that? It's broaching the dialogue that otherwise they want to win from the onset. When they ask the snarky question, they wanted to win, right? And then I go, actually, you should want to lose this argument. And let me explain
So
why.
I think if you want to be more likable, you should inject just, maybe, or think somewhere in that sentence.
That's right. Yeah, it's just topical. I think you would like it, maybe.
There you go. We've had the answer.
That's going to be one of my goals tomorrow is with topical, just to throw that in there.
To me, it gets back to ignorance again, and knowing or not knowing. My cleanings are like riding in a Cadillac now. I did not know that in cleanings, if you have sensitivity, there's a topical that the hygienist can put on you. I did not know that if you use an Air Profimax, it's the just easiest cleaning ever. And so in fact, last time I basically fell asleep.
Wow.
And
great.
yeah. But
That's
he didn't
one of the
mention
highest
to me.
Compliments.
I know. I don't recall him asking if he could put on topical. Perhaps he did. He probably did, and I didn't realize. But I don't think so. And Yeah. So afterwards, I expressed, why was this so amazing, and the answer was, oh, well, you said you have sensitivity. I put this on you. We got this new Air Perfume Max. It's really great. Here's what the benefits of that are. And I love him.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think me being ignorant, though I hadn't known, whereas the patient you talked about did know and said that it made their throat, feel a certain way and all of that. But I would not personally think you're being mean by the way you say it. All you're indicating is you can make it more comfortable on yourself should you choose, should you desire and want to.
If you want the hard way, then the hard way it is,
Yeah.
Maggie, we really appreciate you bringing that video to topic because it was a catalyst for us to have a great philosophical discussion on actually multiple levels.
I always enjoy those. Those are my favorite ones. And not that you're not my favorite people, but you certainly bring that air of rethinking and reconceptualizing everything that goes on in life and trying to put the pieces back together to make them to have them make sense.
Yes.
That's why I always appreciate that.
Well, thank you for another amazing episode. Listeners, if you find yourself saying just, I think, or maybe, you might want to consider. We highly recommend you go to productivedentist.com and check out PDA's 20th anniversary conference this September 12th to the 14th in Frisco, Texas, where Dr. Maggie Augustyn will be presenting and present. Dr. Chad Johnson will be there emceeing as the official MC.
That's going to be a riot.
It's going to be amazing. Are you kidding me? And co-facilitator for our full dental media panel. It'll be a roundtable with 5 of the biggest magazines in dentistry and their editors. And we will be having a lively discussion about the future of dentistry as well. So we highly recommend, if you struggle a little bit with communication, you'd like to see your case acceptance a little higher, go to productivedentist.com and register. Thanks, everyone. Thank you for listening to another episode of Everyday Practices Podcast. Chad and I are here every week thanks to our community of listeners just like you, and we'd love your help. It would mean the world if you can help spread the word by sharing this episode with a fellow dentist and leave us a review on iTunes or Spotify. Do you have an extraordinary story you'd like to share or feedback on how we can make this podcast even more awesome? Drop us an email at podcast@productivedentist.com. And don't forget to check out our other podcasts from Productive Dentist Academy at productivedentist.com/podcasts. See you next week.